what I see happening is that people get into this line of work because they're passionate about helping families. They're passionate about healthy sleep hygiene for kids. Like, they're helper people, and they want to be sleep consultants because they want to support families and they love babies or whatever, right? But what they don't realize is that you have to build a business. Like, this is entrepreneurship, and you can really want to help families. But if you don't know how to articulate your value, if you don't know how to market yourself, if you don't know how to network and connect or be a TikTok star, however you want to do it, if you don't know how to do that, then you're not going to have a business.
Welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the podcast that inspires action and helps you to grow your side hustle into a thriving income stream. I'm your host, Joan Posivy, author of The Way Success Works. Jayne Havens is not only a skilled sleep consultant, but also a thriving entrepreneur. And whether you're a parent or not, this episode has something for everyone. For example, Jayne shares that being a successful sleep consultant doesn't require you to be a parent yourself, which I found surprising. But she makes a compelling case for why this is true. In our chat, she breaks down what it's like to be a sleep consultant, including a day in the life of, and what your starting fees should be. But I also discovered that a lot of what she shares are techniques that any side hustle entrepreneur can adapt and learn from. Like how she wisely pre-screens people by adding one mandatory checkbox that they need to complete prior to booking a call with her. What boundaries you need to set up so that you're not taken advantage of by your clients. And her wise approach to finding new business. You see, instead of pursuing individual parents directly, Jayne suggests connecting with professionals who can refer multiple clients. How can you apply that idea to your side hustle? A great example from Jayne: her child's preschool director has been a great source of referrals because preschoolers who are struggling with behavior usually are sleep deprived. But before all that, if our chats are sparking your entrepreneurial spirit and providing valuable insights, consider showing your support by visiting sidehustlehero.com/support. That's where you can shoot me a virtual coffee. It's a real thing and a fun way to give the show a caffeinated thumbs up. Thank you so much. Now here's my conversation with the founder of Center for Pediatric Sleep Management and snoozefest.com, Jayne Havens. Welcome, Jayne.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today.
Well, I don't want to make any assumptions, so tell us, what does a sleep consultant actually do?
Sure. So a sleep consultant supports parents through the process of establishing healthy and independent sleep hygiene for their children. I personally work with families that have infants all the way up through about 7 or 8 years of age. There's no hard cutoff.
Your work is specific to kids then? You don't get into dealing with
adults? I don't work with adults. I work with adults to support the children, but I don't help adults with sleep.
Got it.
And all of my work is virtual. Some sleep consultants will support families in person in their homes, but all of my work is done by phone, email, Zoom, text. I don't go to my clients' homes, and I support them. You know, I have families that live all over the country, and even I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. I have families that are up and down the East Coast. I've supported families in Canada, in Europe, all over the world, really.
That sounds like a pretty big market then, Jayne.
Yes.
So it's 100% remote for you, and it consists of basically conversations and online communications.
Yeah. So when a family reaches out to me, I actually just got off a call with a mom of a 7-month-old who is desperate for sleep. She actually has 2 older children, so it's not her first rodeo. And this baby is up all night long, screaming and crying, and she's frustrated and feels overwhelmed and isn't sure what to do. So she reached out to me. We had a quick call. She's going to sign on to work together via my website, and I'm going to write her a written plan. The plan is going to outline, age appropriate daytime schedule, bedtime routine, and then strategies for how to respond to any sort of frustration that's going on at bedtime and night wakings in the middle of the night. And then we're going to communicate via email, phone call, text, and we'll spend about 2 weeks together. And at the end, the baby should be sleeping through the night.
Oh, wow. And they can reach out to you during this 2-week process, you say?
Yeah, I check in every day. I make sure to check in every morning just to see how the night went. I'm always around at bedtime to make sure that bedtime goes smoothly. I personally sleep through the night, so I'm not up I'm not up responding to my clients' text messages in the middle of the night. I put my phone on silent when I go to bed, but I'm around all day to support them as necessary.
And I'm sure that's something that you cover off with them in those discussions and setting the
Yeah.
parameters of how we're going to work together.
Absolutely. But what I will say is that when I support families in Europe, for example, I actually can support them in the middle of the night because of the time difference. So it's not a part of my business model. I'm not, aiming to support families around the globe, but when it happens, it's a nice little change of pace and it does feel fun to be able to chat with somebody when it's 3 o'clock in the morning their time and I'm just in the middle of my day going about my business.
Yeah, it's a nice little happy benefit for those parents over in Europe then.
Exactly.
How much do you charge for that?
So I charge $750 for that 2 week virtual consultation. I support anywhere from, I would say, 10 to 15 families a month doing this work.
Okay.
And then I also have a one off call that I offer. I call it an Ask Me Anything call. It's just a 30-minute phone call, and I charge $145 for that service. That call is better suited for people who have already worked with me. So, if they've gone through my 2 week program and then a few months later, they're experiencing some sort of hiccup, maybe the baby's struggling with a nap transition, or maybe they traveled and they're having trouble getting back onto their own time zone.
Right.
It's a
Okay.
great way to just troubleshoot. So, those are really the only two services that I offer.
And do you find that in most cases, the situation can be turned around where the parents are happy within that 2 week time frame?
Yeah, I really
Really?
do.
That
Yeah,
must sound like magic to them.
I
It's like,
know.
I
And
want to
it
believe you, Jayne, but really 2 weeks and I can sleep again?
honestly, sometimes it happens way faster. I'm working with a little 2.5-year-old right now, and I think we're on day 7 or 8, and it's already been several days of me just checking in, saying, like, hey, how was the night? And them saying, it was great. Like, there's literally nothing for us to talk about. So sometimes it resolves faster, but I like to give myself 2 weeks because, there's a lot of things that can get in the way. Usually it's the parents, right? Like usually it's the
Okay.
parents that are getting in the way, but there's a lot of factors at play. And sometimes parents like to take it really gradually. They like to make small changes and see small differences. And then other parents just like to make whatever changes necessary to get it resolved. And I'm committed to supporting families in a way that works for them. So I like to give myself 2 weeks so that if they want to take it slow, we can still get great results in those 14 days.
Right. And I trust it's going to depend on who you're working with, but just generally, is it really about creating a consistency around the whole sleep time routines, that type of thing?
Yeah, it really boils down to, I would say, like 95% of the cases that I work with are infants and toddlers and preschoolers who just don't know how to fall asleep without some help. Infants like to be rocked to sleep or fed to sleep. And if you think about 3-year-olds, they like their mom or dad to lie in bed with them while they fall asleep.
Hmm.
And, all of that is fine as long as it's working. I always say, like, if what you're doing is working for you, then no need to make a change. But what happens when you lie in bed with your 3-year-old at 8 o'clock at night is that they wake up at 11 wondering where you are. And they can't get back to sleep, or they don't think they can get back to sleep without your presence and your support. So, really, it all usually boils down to teaching the child how to fall asleep with less support from a parent. And again, that can be done really gradually, or it can just be, here we are, we're making a change, like things are going to look different tonight.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways to skin the same cat. And that's usually what it boils down to. I do also support nursing parents with night weaning. I'm working with a little 6-month-old baby now, and she was being fed anywhere between 4 and 8 times in the middle of the night, which
Mm,
obviously is not necessary. I mean, maybe once or twice, but not 4 to 8 times at
yeah.
6 months. And so we made some changes to what bedtime looks like and how she falls asleep. And turns out all of that nursing was just her looking for support to get back to sleep. It wasn't really about nutrition. So we're 1 week in and she's already night weaned. She's still, waking up a few times in the middle of the night. She finds her pacifier. She gets herself back to sleep. So we're already in that mode of just me checking in and saying, "Hey, how's the night?" And the mom's like, "I can't believe it. Like she slept all
Yeah.
like it really does feel like magic to a mom who's been struggling for months."
And I'm thinking that part of it too is having someone deal with an expert like yourself is they're hearing it directly from that credible source. And so it would give the parent the confidence to then execute on this.
So I
Whether,
think you're hitting on a point that is really spot on. I think in this age of parenting that we're all living in right now, we're in information
Mhm.
overload. There's so much information. You can buy books, you can buy online courses, you can read about it on blogs, you can ask in Facebook groups. Your sister-in-law is telling you one thing, your mother-in-law is telling you something else. Your friends, your college roommates, like everybody has an opinion and everybody's telling you what they think you should do.
Yes.
And all of that information can be really overwhelming. It's really stressful for a mom who is sleep deprived and not really quite sure how to handle it. And sometimes hiring an expert can help you to sort of tune out all of that noise and just take one person's advice. And so then now the mom can say to their sister-in-law, you know what, we're working with a professional
Yeah.
and we're taking their advice and I'll let you know how it goes. And I think that you're right. That makes a big difference.
I appreciate your concern, but I'm going to stay on this course and, let's just see what happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
What you just said too applies to so many things, not just sleep deprivation across the
Yeah,
board.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Like everything that we do in life is like information overload. And, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later, but, in addition to being a sleep coach, I consider myself to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And it's sort of the same thing, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody has an opinion about the way you should run your business, how you should charge, how you should market yourself, where you should be present, what you can skip. And you really have to hone in on your own plan, your own strategy, and do it in a way that works for you.
Yes. And follow somebody they're already getting the results that you want because clearly they
Sure.
know how to do it. Then they can guide you.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
how did you drum up business in those early days? How did it all start?
Sure. So let me take you back a little bit further. Before I actually launched my business, I have a former background in catering sales. I was an event planner before I was a sleep consultant. And I left my job when my son was born 12 years ago because, catering is nights and weekends and holidays. And I was raised by a stay-at-home mom. So it was literally my dream to raise my kids. Like that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be first in line at carpool line. I wanted to have the best snacks. I wanted to take them to tennis and ballet. Like that was my dream. And so I gave up a really successful career in event planning and was home with my son. And the way that I actually got into this line of work is I sleep trained my own baby. When he was 4 months old, I taught him how to sleep through the night. And it was incredibly empowering and it was life changing. And all of my friends were jealous. So
I bet.
right? Because they all had babies that weren't sleeping. And so they were asking me for help. And so, of course, I helped them because I knew, I had my one experience and I felt like I was an expert.
Yeah.
And so I helped them. And I helped friends. And then that actually sort of evolved into helping friends of friends. People would reach out to me and say, like, hey, I got your name from so and so. I'm really struggling with my baby's sleep. She said you can help me. And I'm like, sure, no problem. And I didn't have any systems in place. I wasn't writing them sleep plans. I was literally just like getting on a quick call and giving them some information and providing them support via text message. That's all it looked like. And I did that for years, literally years.
Really?
And
This is a business at
no,
this
no,
point.
it's not a business. It's a hobby.
Free advice
Yeah,
you're
this
giving. Okay.
free advice for years. And I was sort of, without realizing it, like honing in on my expertise and mastering my craft. And I just was doing it because I loved it. And then my daughter was born 4 years later, and she was a really challenging baby, not from a sleep perspective, but just from a temperament perspective.
Mm.
She cried all day. And I was like, I got to get a job. I got to get out of here. Like, this is really hard. I was burnt out
Yeah.
from stay-at-home mom life. And I kept thinking, like, what could I do to make a little money, contribute to our family's household income? But I wasn't really prepared to put my kids in daycare or hire a nanny. I still wanted to be the primary caregiver for my kids. So I decided to turn my hobby into a business. And so what I
Mm.
did was I went online, I took a sleep consultant certification course. I literally Googled how to become a sleep consultant, even though I kind of already was one. And I took an online course, got certified, and just like put myself out there because I was already helping people. People knew that this was something I was already good at. For me, all it really took was me making a Facebook post and letting people know that I was turning a hobby into a business and that I would really appreciate support from family and friends. And if anybody knew anybody that was struggling, I would love to help them. I hung out in Facebook groups, connected with moms who are struggling. I connected with professionals that were supporting parents in other capacities. Like my kid's preschool director was a really great referral source for me
Oh,
because,
nice.
3-year-olds in preschool who are struggling with behavior usually are sleep deprived. So the preschool director was able to flag kids that she felt were not getting enough sleep. And she would call the parents and recommend that they speak with me. I also have a good friend who's a family photographer. She takes those beautiful little newborn photos. And, everybody walks into her studio complaining about how tired they are. So she would say, "Oh, my friend can help you." And so she would refer
Nice.
business to me. And so it was really a combination of leveraging my own connections
Mhm.
and then also getting out there and connecting with others who are supporting parents in various capacities for the sake of, making meaningful and strategic connections.
That really speaks to the importance of that marketing piece and really letting people know what you're doing, what you're up to.
Absolutely. I always say that like the key to growing a successful business is that people need to know that you have one,
That's
right?
right.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
like you can be really good at what you do, but if nobody knows that you're doing it, then it's useless, right? So you have to talk about your business and then also getting other people to talk about your business, I think is so much more valuable because when somebody recommends you, that holds so much more weight than you recommending yourself. So getting as many people as possible to like scream from the rooftops that you can help them, I think is really worthwhile.
Any tips on how we can do a better job of that, getting other people to scream from the rooftops about our business?
Yeah. So I am all about making connections.
Yeah.
I'm all about just having conversations with people and first and foremost, showing an interest in what they do. If I reach out to, let's say, a lactation consultant, I might reach out to a lactation consultant and say to them, I'm reaching out to you because I support a lot of breastfeeding moms who really want to preserve that nursing relationship while also establishing healthy sleep hygiene. And I'm looking to collaborate with a lactation consultant that would support my clients in their desire to improve sleep, but also want to preserve the nursing relationship.
Right.
And so, would you be a good referral partner? Would you be somebody that I could send my clients to and they'd feel safe and comfortable working with you, knowing that it's also their priority to establish healthy sleep hygiene? And so, I'm asking them about their business and like, would you be a good person for me to refer? And of course, like they're going to be excited about that because
Yes.
here I am approaching you like, can I refer business to you? And that usually invites a Zoom meeting or a coffee chat. And not every time that you reach out is it a good fit. And I
Right.
think it's really important to make sure that you're making really strong, meaningful connections rather than just making 10,000 connections. If I think about like my business, most of my referrals come from probably half a dozen providers and
Right.
then just former clients and friends of friends. So you don't need so many, you just need good ones.
Quality ones. Yeah. When you do find that it's a fit between yourself and this other partner, is there a monetary relationship as well as far as paying a commission?
For me, there isn't. I think like a thank you goes a long
Yeah.
way.
Yes.
No, I don't. I'm really thoughtful about making sure that my referral partners feel seen and feel thanked. Like around the holidays, I might send them, some goodies in the mail, or maybe even not during the holidays, like randomly in like March, I might do it as
Yes.
a total sneak attack. I make sure to put thank you notes in the mail. I always make sure to send a text to say thank you. But most of my referral partners are really grateful that I am providing a service for their clients. If I think about, like, to give you another example, I have a referral partner who's a mental health professional. She's a therapist who supports moms who are struggling with postpartum anxiety and depression.
Hmm.
And she refers a ton of business to me. And I actually can't refer business to her because she's booked. She has a wait list. She doesn't
Right.
need, like, she's
Yeah.
fully booked. I cannot refer business to her even if I want to. And so she refers business to me all the time, but she says to me that she actually can't do her job to work on the postpartum anxiety and work on the postpartum depression if mom is struggling with sleep deprivation. So
Right.
actually, I'm her first line of defense. Like, I have to do my job so that she can do hers.
Right.
So that's like a really strategic partnership because I am helping her to do her job successfully. And there's literally nothing I can give her in return other than doing a good job so that she can do a good job.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. She needs you.
She needs me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wish that I could send her business, but like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like she's booked. It is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. You'd mentioned Facebook groups. So you found those effective?
Personally, yes. I think that moms are hanging out in Facebook groups.
Okay.
Now, I do think that moms are hanging out in Facebook groups looking for free advice. So they're not necessarily looking for a sleep consultant in a Facebook group. What I think happens is somebody posts in a Facebook group, my 3-year-old won't stay in bed. He's out of his room every hour in the middle of the night. I am dying slowly. Like, does anybody have any ideas? Right? They're looking for free advice. And so what I'll do is I will reply to that thread and I
Yes.
will give really good advice. I'll literally give her the answer to her problem. I will outline in bullet points exactly what she needs to do. Now, she was looking for free advice. So, like, she's not going to hire me. She took my free advice. And actually, she's probably not going to have success because she doesn't have accountability and support. That's really the missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But somebody else will be reading that thread who also has a 3-year-old who doesn't stay in bed. And they'll read that and they'll say, oh, she's the smartest one in the room. She's the most helpful person on this thread. And she will reach out to me. She will book a call. She'll understand the value of actually hiring a coach to help her. And that's how I get a paid client out of it.
Very nice. But it sounds like from the beginning, as well as now, your greatest source of clients has been through your existing network and people that you've reached out to. Is
Yeah.
that
So
fair?
most of my clients, yeah, I think so. Most of my clients now come to me because they got my name from somebody who has worked with me successfully. So
Yeah.
at this point, it's really referral based. But if I think about the spider web of like where they've all come from, they're
Yes.
all like in my network. It's like people who I went to college with, and then it's like their camp friends or their coworkers, or like it's all spinning from my own personal
Yes.
social network, I think.
And you got to be in the game long enough for that to happen, for that momentum to build.
For sure. For sure.
You had mentioned a couple of sources of revenue. So what would your earnings be these days, specifically in the consultant role?
So it's probably anywhere from, it varies month to month,
Sure.
but it's about 8 to 10 or $12,000 a month just in consulting, like just
Yeah,
supporting
just
clients.
that. And it sounds from what you've described, your expenses would be pretty low.
Yeah, they are pretty low. The only thing that I really spend money on in my business is website hosting, thank you notes. I send my clients PJs in the mail after they're done working with me. I send them a little package with, a thank you note, and it's like a little sticker that says sleep trained by Jayne. And I have a little, the whole little setup that I send them. So the PJs I get wholesale are, $9 each, and it's like $5 for postage and the
Right.
card and the packaging, like
Yeah.
all of that costs money. But yeah, business expenses are really, really low for the consulting business.
Right. What a wonderful idea, Jayne. And it
Thank
wouldn't
you.
surprise me too, a parent receiving that, think, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful, and actually posting about it. You've got that person shouting from the roof. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the hope. And you know what? I've even had situations because, like, I always say, like, not every situation is perfect, right?
Mhm.
Like, my hope is that all of my clients get amazing results and they love me and they have a perfect experience working with me. Sometimes personalities aren't the best mix. Sometimes my clients don't follow the protocol exactly as I would hope that they do, right?
Yes.
Like, not every single case is a slam dunk.
Sure.
And what I find is that the PJs sometimes like soften the blow when it's not a perfect situation. If
Yeah.
we end up with a case that's like they made some progress, but maybe it's like a B, B minus. It's not an A+ situation,
Yep.
which happens in business. Like, of course, you don't want that to happen regularly, but it
Well, and
does. It happens.
you're dealing with a little human too, so there's no guarantees, and you're not right there. The big humans too.
The big humans are actually the problem, not the
Yeah.
little humans.
Okay.
And so, it's sort of like it's the same as like a weight loss coach or like a fitness coach. You can hire somebody to tell you to eat healthy, and then you can like binge on cookies and cake and ice cream and pizza, and there's nothing that coach can do, right? Like
Yes.
that is
Yeah.
outside of their control.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit the same in my business. So what I find is that when families don't do 100% of what they need to do and they don't get 100% of the results, the PJs are just a great way to like leave it on a great note because
Yeah.
we've wrapped up, they're feeling okay. And then they get these PJs in the mail and they're like, that was really sweet. I wasn't expecting that. And it's just a nice way to close it out on a good note, regardless of what's going on in their 2-year-old's bedroom, you know?
Very nice. Well, you might have just answered this, Jayne, because I was going to ask you what the biggest challenge is that you experience in your consulting business, either running it, growing it.
Yeah. I think for me, it's definitely the parents that I work with, especially parents of older children. I'm not talking infants. I'm talking 3, 4, 5, 6 year olds.
Yes.
This is what we do together is literally limit setting. And these children can understand expectations. So we're communicating with them, we're role playing, we're advancing them with expectations for behavior. And then it's up to the parents to hold a boundary.
Yeah.
And when parents can't hold boundaries with their 4-year-old or their 5-year-old, it looks like a mess. It's really bad, right?
Yeah.
And so the hardest thing for me is that like I know how easy it is if you just show the child that like I love you, you're safe, it's time for bed. And you're just like shutting it down.
Yeah.
And parents have a lot of trouble with that sometimes. And so yeah, that is probably the hardest part of my job.
Mm. Well, for someone thinking that they might decide to get into this line of work, perhaps paint us a picture of what they could expect, like walk us through kind of like a day in the life of a sleep consultant.
Yeah. So I love this question because really every day looks completely different. I'll walk you through like what my life looks like pretty much today. I'm currently supporting, I think, 4 families, which is a pretty light caseload for me. And I think I have 2 infants and 2 older kids. And so every morning I just check in with the parents. I'm usually on a group text with both mom and dad if there are 2 parents, or sometimes just mom will handle it. But I send a text message in the morning. How was the night? Quick back and forth. Then I spend the day either fielding text messages from my clients, like my infant clients will text me during nap time to let me know how nap time is going.
Okay.
If the baby wakes 20 minutes into a nap, they might want support with how to handle that. So text message support during the day. I spent a lot of time on my computer, like scrolling Facebook, finding new people to connect with, not necessarily parents, but other experts in the parenting space. And so I hang out on social media. I'm not big on Instagram. I don't have TikTok. I like to use social media to just meet people, not
Yes.
to like, I'm not big on content creation. I like to just network and connect. So I spend all my free time doing that. The one family I was telling you about with the 7-month-old, I'm pretty sure she's going to hire me while we're having this conversation. So then I'll spend this afternoon writing her sleep plan. Thankfully, I've written thousands of them, and I have a file that literally says like 7-month-old babies. So I can like
Really
take one that I've already written and
Yes.
make tiny changes to make it relevant for her baby. And so I'll write that sleep plan. I think I have 2 more calls today, this afternoon, people who are interested in hiring me. I call those discovery calls.
Okay.
So I'll field those. And then, the rest of my day is like, I'm going to go on a walk with a friend, or I'm going to like run to Target. I have a really flexible life. I went to Sam's Club this morning. Like I get to like run errands and play tennis in the middle of the day and support my clients all at the same time.
It sounds like you got the best of both worlds in the sense that you've got the flexibility to be hanging out with your kids and making that a priority, as well as running your business.
Absolutely.
And you'd mentioned spending some time connecting with other professionals. And to me, that sounds like it would be a much more productive route to go. Because if you're reaching out to a single parent, that's one single client. But if you've got this professional that ends up sending you all these leads, that's time well spent.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
also, as I said before, parents like to be told to hire a sleep consultant by somebody else that they already trust,
Mm,
not by me who's trying to tell them that they need to hire me.
right.
Right. So I could meet a mom in a Facebook group who's struggling with her kid's sleep and tell her, you'd really benefit from my support. And she doesn't want to hear that. But then maybe she's in therapy later this afternoon and she's complaining to her therapist about how tired she is. And her therapist says, you know what? I actually know a really great sleep consultant. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden she's like, that's a great idea. Right. So
Yes.
hearing it from somebody else that you already trust, somebody else that you already have a relationship with is always going to be more valuable. So I definitely spend more time trying to connect with professionals than actually connecting with parents.
And you mentioned that discovery call. Do you find that people are just looking for the solution in that call?
Rarely,
Like,
because I am setting very clear expectations on the front end for what the discovery call is about.
okay.
So, so I am very, very clear because I've been in this business
Yeah,
too long.
okay.
Like
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing at this point, and I have very clear expectations set. When they sign up for the call, it says the purpose of this call is for you to learn a little bit about me and what it would look like for me to support you and help you to reach your goals. And
Yes.
it's also an opportunity for me to learn about your circumstances and make sure that we're a good fit, right? So I'm being really clear about that. I also, when people sign up for a call with me, they have to click a box that says they've reviewed my pricing on my website. And because I don't want to hear it from them that like, oh, that's really expensive. Like, no, you looked
Right.
beforehand and you're
Yes.
gonna like if right. Like I don't want to waste my time with people who don't want to
Yes.
spend my fee, right?
You've pre-qualified them a little bit there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then the other thing that I just changed recently is I require that if it's a two-parent household, I require that both parents be on the call.
Mm,
And so they have to click a box that says that they agree that their spouse will be attending the call. And if they're a single parent, they can just write not applicable. But I am firm and stern on that because I get on calls with desperate moms who are so ready to make a change. And then they say, I have to go chat about this with my husband and then their husband doesn't understand the value of what I can do for their family. And so now I require that both parents be on the call, and that's really effective. But it's really great for mom too, because again, like it's easier for me to articulate my value to her spouse than for her to like beg for this type of support that he
sure.
doesn't really understand.
And for the effectiveness of your work to give it a chance, they really need to both be on side.
Absolutely. That
Like,
is absolutely right. And that is an entirely different but totally on point reason for why both parents need to be on the
mhm,
call because
yeah,
frankly, if I can tell that one parent is committed and the other isn't, I am not really ready to get started with them. Like I need them both to be ready. The success of my business rides on the idea that I'm going to get them results, right?
yes,
Because like the better the outcome, the more likely they are to refer me to other families.
sure,
So working with a family that's uncommitted is terrible. Like,
yeah.
collecting the fee is fine, but it's a bad experience to not get them the results they're looking for. And then I don't get referrals from it. So I want to make sure you're right. I want to make sure that both parents are ready.
Hmm. And you've been referring to moms and mom groups. Do you have any dads as far as clients?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do. What I will say is that for better or for worse, I think the reality is that moms tend to bear the brunt of sleep deprivation in the home. Like if a child is not sleeping, it's usually mom that's getting up with the baby, getting up with the 3-year-old. It's rarely dad. And so we are almost always working. It's the mom who's like seeking this type of support. That being said, I love to involve dads in this process for a few reasons. One, I think it just sort of like shifts the tone and the dynamic in the household so the child understands like something is changing. It also gives the dad an opportunity to get in the game. These
Hmm.
dads, they're wonderful dads. They're caring parents. They want to be involved and they feel sort of shunned out of the situation because all they hear is like, oh, Luke wants mommy or Benny wants mommy. Like that's all they hear. So helping them to get reintegrated into the routine and being an equal support person for the child is
Yeah.
really beneficial. But it's typically the mom that's bearing the brunt of the responsibility of the child waking throughout the night.
Mm. Well, if somebody does get into this line of work, what's something that a newbie into this business wouldn't think of or is surprised by?
I think as somebody who trains people to do this work, what I see happening is that people get into this line of work because they're passionate about helping families. They're passionate about healthy sleep hygiene for kids. Like they're helper people and they want to
Okay.
be sleep consultants because they want to support families and they love babies or whatever, right? But what they don't realize is that you have to build a business. Like
Mm.
this is entrepreneurship
Yes.
and you can really want to help families, but if you don't know how to articulate your value, if you don't know how to market yourself, if you don't know how to network and connect or be a TikTok star, however you want to do it, if you don't know how to do that, then you're not going to have a business.
Right.
And so what I love to do is actually take those helper people and those like warm, empathetic, wonderful souls and turn them into really thriving entrepreneurs.
So when you are working with them, it sounds like then there's two pieces to it. You're actually teaching them how to do the work as a consultant, but then also here's how you need to get it off the ground and build your business and all the
Yeah,
aspects of the business. So both
right.
both both prongs.
Right, exactly.
So who makes the best sleep consultants then?
That is a really great question. That's a really great question. So, some of the people who I've trained to work in this field are not mothers themselves. And they come to me wondering if they can be a sleep consultant without having children of their own.
Hmm.
And my answer to that is absolutely.
Really?
And I think that, yeah, absolutely. And the example that I give is that when my daughter was 2, she was in a preschool class taught by a woman who did not have children of her own.
Okay.
And I always said she was a far better mother than I was. Like she was better at she was warm, she was nurturing, she was loving, but she was also firm and stern with her boundaries. And she got all of these little 2-year-olds to walk in line and follow directions and share and all this stuff that like I never could figure out. Right. And so I think sometimes I don't want to say that like the best sleep consultants are
Mhm.
not moms, but I think it's worth mentioning that those who do this work who are not mothers, who don't have children of their own, I think come to it without that personal bias that sometimes we get stuck on. Like I always think about how I would improve sleep in my own home. And that's not necessarily how I coach all of my clients, but of
Right.
course, I'm always sort of like thinking about my own personal experiences and what it looked like when my children were that age. And I actually think all of that can like muddy the waters. And
Mm.
if you're just more focused on supporting the family that you're up against rather than thinking about what it looked like when your children were that age, I think you can show up with less bias and, just do good work. So,
Yes.
that's not to
Interesting.
say that like people who don't have children are better sleep consultants, but I think it's a great angle. And I really do think that people who are, it's like nannies who don't have kids of their own. It's like they're professionals. They know exactly what they're doing. And it doesn't
Yes.
matter that they haven't raised their own kids because they've raised 50 others. And I think that that holds true with sleep consulting. I think that you also need to be patient, empathetic,
Mm.
supportive, not afraid to set a boundary, just like we're asking parents to set boundaries with their children. I think we as sleep consultants have to set boundaries with our clients.
Yes.
And that's something that I've become more comfortable with over the years because the work that we do is stressful. Our clients are stressed, they're anxious. And if we don't protect our own boundaries and our own mental health, then like we're carrying the weight of their anxiety on our shoulders. So we have to be really careful to protect our own mental health and well-being.
Yes.
So, a lot goes into it, but at the end of the day, like it's really incredibly rewarding work. So if it's something that lights you up, if it's something that you're excited about, then I think you gotta take a chance.
Do you have any male consultants that you're training? Dads?
Yeah, I do. So my training program is called Center for Pediatric Sleep Management. It's an online training course, and people go through it at their own pace. They learn on their own timeline. They get lifetime access to the curriculum. We have a Facebook group for students and grads. We're about 830 strong right now. And I would say out of 830, there's probably like 9 men.
Okay.
So not a lot. The men who have been through our program have done so, I think, for a couple of reasons. Either one, they're already in the sleep industry in a different area. Like maybe they're a sleep tech who they do stuff with like sleep apnea, more like the medical side of sleep.
Okay.
And they just want education on the behavioral side. They're just looking for continuing education. I'm
Okay.
not even sure that they are interested in supporting families the way that I do. They're just looking for more
Yeah.
information so that they can,
Mhm.
just have more knowledge. And then we have a few dads in our program who are either like stay-at-home dads and they had to sort of lean out of their careers because their wives happen to be the breadwinners, and they're feeling like, I want to do something, but I still have to be home with the kids. And so we've had a few men go through the program, and we have a couple of, actually maybe just one. We have a husband and wife duo that do it together. And the dad is more tech savvy and the mom is more, I think she's more like customer facing. And then the husband does all the back end stuff of the business, but
Right.
they're a team. And I think that
Mhm.
that's really great.
Yeah, I think a great partnership there. You had mentioned now that you're charging, I believe it was 750 for the 2-week program. What's a starting rate that you find people getting into it?
Yeah. So I actually would love for them to start at 750. I don't think that my pricing is so outrageous. Like I'm probably on the higher end of the normal or average range. And I do that on purpose. Even though I've been in this business a number of years and I'm training other people to do this work, like clearly I'm an expert in the field, but I like to keep my pricing accessible. Like $750 is a lot of money. That being said, even sort of like a middle class family that doesn't have endless money to spend, if
Right.
this was really, really important to them, they could prioritize and budget for it and they could make it happen. And I do want to remain accessible to as many families as possible. So that's why I keep my pricing where it is. When students graduate from my program, I encourage them to, if they're going to set up a similar business model to mine where they do a 2-week virtual consultation, I encourage them not to set their pricing below $500. I think
Mhm.
anything below that is like they're undervaluing themselves. They're
Yes.
not taking themselves seriously. I understand that it feels scary for them to price themselves in the $600 or $700 range to start. So I'm okay with them starting in the fives,
Yeah.
but I want them to creep that up really quickly. I always tell them, it's like, where do you like to buy your shoes? Do you like to buy your shoes at Payless or do you like to buy your shoes at Nordstrom? And everybody says Nordstrom. And it's like, okay, then like set your pricing at a night, right? Like people, I think there's psychology behind it. Like people
Oh,
actually,
yeah, it is.
so people perceive something that's more expensive to be better. And when something's really cheap, I think people are questioning, like, are they good? Do they know what they're talking about? And so I actually have always found it easier to sell my services every time I raise my pricing. I have an easier time convincing people because they see my pricing and they think, wow, like you must really know what she's doing. And so
Like,
I'm encouraging my graduates to do the same.
right. And that's the other benefit of having a course, having somebody like yourself in that corner saying, no, you really need to be charging at least $500. Really? Yes.
Absolutely.
Gonna
And,
grow
the
into it.
other thing is this is really hard work, especially those first couple of paying clients. I don't know what it is about the first couple of paying clients, but they are going to make you work for your money.
Yeah.
They're going to be anxious. They're going to be texting a lot. Like you haven't figured out how to set your boundaries. You haven't figured out how to properly coach them on the front end so that you don't have to be in touch every single second, every single day. Right.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, like it's hard. So you have to charge enough so that you don't hate your job, right? Like you want it to be worthwhile.
Absolutely. And you mentioned graduating. How does that certification program work? Like, is there something in the course that shows that person's completed these modules, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's all, as I said, it's all online. It's a combination of reading and video content. There
Okay.
are a few assessments throughout the program. And then at the very end, there's a final assignment, which is based on two case studies. It's a little 6-month-old baby boy and a 2.5-year-old little girl. And these are actual former clients of mine, just with the names
Sure.
changed, but the details are all very accurate. And so my students go through this program, they get to the final assignment, they submit written sleep plans based on these case studies. And that's an opportunity for me to really see that they understand the methods, the techniques, the coaching style, that they know how to properly communicate everything that needs to be done. And I grade them. And if they do a great job, they pass. If they don't do a great job, I give them very specific feedback and they have as many opportunities to revise as necessary. And once they're finished, they get a certificate and a little graphic for their website that says that they're a certified sleep consultant. And they get to remain inside of our community forever for as long as I'm doing this work.
Yeah.
And I put together a lot of continuing education for my students. I don't resell to my community. It's just not a part of my business model. A lot of people talk about, like, I have 800 people inside of my course. I should be selling them other courses, new trainings. And I just, maybe this goes back to my philosophy on like networking and connecting, but
Yes.
I don't believe in that. I just continue to educate them. I continue to provide value. I continue to be the most helpful person in their business. And they actually refer people to the program. And that's how my community grows. So, a lot of my students who are inside of Center for Pediatric Sleep Management were either friends or former clients of people who have already taken my program.
Well, the certification, that must vary state to state, country to country in terms of if there's like a federal regulatory body or something like that?
Yeah. So sleep consulting is entirely unregulated.
Okay.
So there is no governing body that regulates the work that we do, for better or for worse. The only thing that I really think should be regulated to some degree is we should be teaching safe sleep practices. Like that, I think is most important.
Right.
And I wish that there were some regulations around that. But what we do as sleep consultants is we're really just parent coaches that have a niche in bedtime. That's
Yes,
it.
yes,
Right.
yes.
So I don't know that the work that we do requires a whole lot of oversight, if I'm being completely transparent, but there is no governing body that regulates the field. And, my program is US based, but we have students and graduates in Canada, in Europe, in Asia, like all over the world.
Yes.
And it doesn't really matter where you take your training as long as you are getting a comprehensive and evidence-based education and you're getting the support that you're looking for from leadership. And that's what we try to provide inside of CPSM.
So what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Jayne?
Sure. So I actually have my own podcast. It's called Becoming a Sleep Consultant, which is a great place just to learn more about sleep consulting, what it looks like to run a sleep consulting business. Even if you're just a side hustler that never wants to be a sleep consultant, I still think the Becoming a Sleep Consultant podcast is a great resource because we talk about business building and entrepreneurship. We talk about how to find clients. We talk about overcoming limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome and fear of failure, all that stuff that's really transferable to any side hustle.
Yes.
So I would definitely recommend checking out the podcast, joining our Facebook group, which is called Becoming a Sleep Consultant. And I'm not super active on social media, so I won't even share that. My two websites are thesnoozefest.com and thecpsm.com.
I love that, snoozefest.com.
Yeah, that's my consulting business. So like if you're listening and you have a 3-year-old that doesn't stay in bed, thesnoozefest.com, reach out for sure.
Excellent. We'll make sure all those links are in the show notes. So what's your best tip, Jayne, to inspire others to start or grow their side hustle?
So I would say that my best tip is just to get started. I speak to so many people who will say to me, like, I've been thinking about becoming a sleep consultant for 3 years.
Yes.
And when they say that to me, it's like, can you imagine where your business would be if you had started 3 years ago? Right. So like, one of my favorite quotes is like, the secret to getting ahead is getting started, right? Like just take that first step. Nothing needs
Yes.
to be perfect. When I first started my business, I didn't even have a computer actually. I was using an iPad and my phone. I didn't have a computer for like 2 years in running my business.
Hmm.
So just do something to get started, whatever that may be. Like take a course, hire a VA that can help you, just like take a step in the direction of where you want to be. I think that first step is always the hardest. And
Yes.
then you start to take more steps and more steps and more steps. And then all of a sudden you're so much further along than wherever you thought you were going to be.
That person, the best time for them to have started that consultancy business was 3 years ago. Second best time is today.
Exactly. I love that. I'm going to write that down.
Well, thank you so much, Jayne, for sharing your expertise on what's involved in becoming a sleep consultant and offering some really clear, solid tips on how to grow the business. And of course, for being today's side hustle hero.
Thank you so much for having me.
One of the key takeaways from Jayne is that no matter what you're doing, whether it's sleep consulting, selling at markets, or renting party tents, at the core, you're running a business. That means understanding the basics like your profit margins and the financials. I remember an earlier guest, she was a soap maker and her full-time work was as an accountant. And she laughed about being one of the few soap makers who actually knew the cost of producing a bar of soap. Of course, it's not just about the numbers, though. You also need to continually improve your skills and market yourself. But here's the thing, like Jayne said, don't wait till everything is perfect before you start. The important thing is just start. You won't have all the answers, ever. And that's okay. And everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Maybe you're great at the numbers, but struggle with creativity. Or maybe you're a people person and really not into the financial side. The important part is to begin. And as you go, you'll learn or you'll hire what you don't know. When I launched this podcast, I had a million questions. What mic to buy, how to set up a studio, where to find guests. But step by step, I'm figuring it out. And as you grow, new challenges will always pop up. That's the process. So my message to you is, have fun with it. You're never going to know it all, and you'll never finish learning. So continue. Continue to learn, to grow, to make money, and of course, enjoy the ride. Well, that's a wrap for today. You'll find links to Jayne's website and the full show notes at our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you're enjoying what you're seeing in this podcast, it would be so appreciated if you would take a moment and add your comment, share the episode, and please subscribe. It'll let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thanks for watching, and hustle on.